And thank you everyone for arriving. Christina, do you want me to say a few words about my background, and then are you going to introduce Harry, or should I introduce him?
Feel free to introduce him. Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So thank you everyone for joining. As Christina mentioned, I'm an operating partner at the firm and also the founder of Insight Ignite, which is our digital acceleration program. Over the past 18 months, I've had hundreds of conversations with leaders at large global companies, but also within our portfolio about the future of work, how they pivoted and reacted to the crisis that we're in, and also what the future might look like. So I'm really excited today to welcome Harry Moseley, who's actually a long time friend. I was looking, we actually met more than 10 years ago. He was at Blackstone at the time, and we had some great discussions back then. He actually went on to be an entrepreneur, and he and I collaborated during his entrepreneur activities. And then he went on to be the CIO at KPMG, and we continued collaborating there. And then Harry and I had lots of discussions as he was thinking about what might be next in his life. I remember we were debating whether or not he should join Zoom, which turned out to be an absolutely fantastic decision. So it's such an honor to have you here, Harry, and I know you're a thought leader in this space. Maybe a bit more about your background, and then I'll share a few opening thoughts about what I'm hearing out there, and then I'd love to hear from you, your view of the world right now. But quickly on your background.
Yeah, sure. So it's a privilege to join you and the group here at Insight Partners this morning, this afternoon, this evening. I'm not sure where people are dialing in from. It's it's been very humbled by the career I had. It's like, I remember sort of talking to the provost of Trinity College Dublin, and many months back, and he asked me if there was any surprises in my career. Well, the whole career was a surprise to me, because sort of when you graduate college, you're it's all about getting a job, and little did I know what lay in front of me. And I think that it's as somebody said recently, you make your own luck. I'm not sure. I think it's a combination of a lot of, the career was based upon a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment, loyalty, doing what I believe was the right thing, enjoying every moment of it. And when I didn't, then I sort of put my hand up and said, I'm not enjoying it. And so, sort of when I think back to December of 2017, which is almost 4 years ago. Holy smokes. Time flies when you're having fun, right? And I retired, and 4 days later, I got called by Zoom and they invited me to join them as their global CIO. And I remember that very first conversation. Guys, I just retired 4 days ago, and it's kind of like getting a job isn't part of the plan. I had a very different sort of trajectory in mind of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. But meeting Eric Yuan, our CEO and founder, very humbling man. He had an amazing vision. And I remember thinking and talking to my wife and saying, maybe I'm going to put retirement on hold for a few years, because I think this could be a lot of fun. And little did I know what I was in for. And it has been fun. The last year has been exceptional in connecting the world, connecting people, connecting enterprises, governments, educational institutions. It's just been, somebody joked with me a couple of weeks back, Harry, you should write a book. And it's kind of like, well, last year is a book in its own right, and Zoom is a book, and Blackstone's a book. So it's been an awful lot of fun, and I'm very humbled by it. Thank you.
That's really great. Well, I think what's very unique, Harry, about your background is you're both an operator and an entrepreneur, which is a rare kind of dual skill set. And you've also been always very focused on building your personal ecosystem, which I think is really important. So congratulations on all your success. Just a few opening comments on this topic. We've hosted upwards of 200 or 300 large corporations, and we've also talked with many of our portfolio companies about, I guess what the opportunities might be in the future. And I think it's very clear that productivity is a huge opportunity. There's been massive gains over the past 18 months from a productivity standpoint. There's also a big opportunity for cost takeout. we're working with a large organization right now that's contemplating keeping 90,000 people in the home, which will have a massive cost impact. And there's also a huge talent opportunity because many, A player and A plus player contributors want flexibility. And so I think the opportunities are clear, but there's some challenges that are in the way. And I'm going to center some of my questions during our fireside chat about some of the challenges that'll unlock those opportunities. But before that, Harry, I'd love to hear, 10 or so minutes, just what have you seen over the last 18 months? And we'd love to just hear your perspective on, the transition into the virtual workplace and the future of work.
Sorry, that's my dog barking. I think he needs to go outside my office. Just give me. This is the real world of working from home, right? There we go. That's sort of one of the things I'm dreading about sort of going back to the office is the commute. Earlier today, I was talking to the CIO of a financial services firm, one of our clients, and she was telling me how, she spent an hour driving to the office this morning and how weird that was. And it's also, gross waste of time, right? And it's going to be another hour going home. And then I was joking with her, sort of about my dog. It's like, yeah, well, if I go to the office, it's like, will I be able to take my dog? And will I be able to turn up in shorts and sandals? Because that's how I live at home. Because, sort of visual from the waist up, right? So it's been quite the trip. So yeah, let's see, last 12, 18, 24 months. So just a quick couple of stats around Zoom, if you will. We've been clearly, sort of growing in all sorts of ways. I think sort of the general comment is that COVID-19 has been accelerating the trajectory we were already on. Question is it 2 years, 3 years, or 5 years in terms of acceleration? Digital transformation, it's no longer about digital transformation, it's about digital disruption now. Mm-hmm. At Zoom, our Q1 FY22 earnings that we announced June 1st was 956.2 million for the quarter, which is shy of $1 billion, 191% year-on-year growth, little north of 5,000 employees. When I joined them, 3+ years ago, we were 800 employees. Over half our employees joined during the pandemic.
Amazing.
We're processing now in excess of 3 trillion annualized meeting minutes, up from 100 billion, and hosting over 300 million daily meeting participants, up from 10 million. So, whilst we've gone through this phenomenal growth, we've also maintained our service levels and our customer satisfaction. So we're and introduced new products and hundreds of new features. So it's been, just an amazing journey. When Eric founded the company a little over 10 years ago, was April of 2011. His vision was all about empowering people to accomplish more and to create a virtual experience which was as good as, if not better than, the in-person. So let's talk a little bit about that. So we're empowering people to accomplish more, whether you're the CEO of a company, whether you're the leader, whether you're an investment banker, whether you're a professional service person, whether you're a medical practitioner, an educational person. It's not about empowering people to accomplish more meetings. It's about empowering them to help their companies grow, to help patients have a better life, so that they can all sort of respectively go on and accomplish more in their lives, for their companies, etc. And I think that's a very powerful and deep and thoughtful statement. And when it comes to sort of the virtual environment being as good as the in-person experience, yeah, it would have been great to see you in person. It would be great to have a cup of coffee, but think about, where I've forgotten where you are in England, but I think you're
in Somerset near Bath.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of like, think about how many hours and think about sort of the impact you would have from a carbon perspective if, you know,
Mhm.
if we were doing this in person, not to just you and me, right? Not to mention all the other people who have joined us here today. So I think that's truly been, you know, sort of very impactful. When we think about, and you mentioned some of these topics, you know, when you think about the employee and the employer, observations are employees in many cases, in, you know, millions, hundreds of millions of people around the world, you know, have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they can be more productive. They can be very effective, in many cases more than actually going to the office, not because they're working longer hours, but because they get time to focus on things. They get uninterrupted time to actually get work done. So I personally, you know, sort of believe that's a more productive environment. Work-life balance, having the dog, you know, sort of seeing the kids off to school in the morning, being there when the kids come home, being able to be home to take care of an aged parent or family member, or you know, these are gifts that, quite honestly, that we didn't have in the pre-pandemic world, which now employees are expecting in the post-pandemic world because they've proven they can effectively work like this. And so employees, you know, are looking for their employers to offer this in the post-pandemic world. And if they don't, then they're going to vote with their feet. And, you know, I've heard stories along that line over the last few weeks where employees are petitioning their leadership for, you know, sort of this sort of model. And then on the flip side, employers see, you know, a different perspective. They see that, you know, they can be geographically agnostic in terms of where they're hiring from. We definitely have a human capital shortage. We know that. I mean, you know, it's one of the fast food chains is offering like a $500, you know, start-on bonus, which is more than, you know, the person would make in an entire week. You know, there's another organization in New Jersey that's offering people a $50, I think it's Amazon or some gift card, just to take an interview. Think about that. I mean, it's sort of crazy. And employers also see, you know, sort of what's the purpose or what's the point of having these large corporate offices. One of our clients told us when we were talking to the CEO recently that they're reducing their corporate footprint by 50%.
Right.
And they're establishing these satellite offices because people don't want to do these long commutes. They want the flexibility, but they don't have, you know, sort of the luxury of having a great work environment in their home, but they want to work near home. So this is kind of like a whole new topic coming up, work near home. They want to be able to see the kids off in the morning, you know, at 8 o'clock, and then like 15 minutes later, they're, you know, in their work near home office, right? Or they can take a bike ride or maybe even walk, you know, it's, and this all has huge impact on carbon footprint, quality of life, etc. So, you know, every organization fundamentally believes that we're moving towards a hybrid work model. Whether it's 2 days in the office, 3 days in the office. I know when we were chatting, I think that was yesterday, you know, your idea is, well, I'll spend a week in the office and then weeks out of the office so they don't have to. So it's like, you know, people are going to, you know, the biggest experiment that we've conducted in the history of work globally is going to continue in the post-pandemic world for another sort of 12 or 20, 24 months. And only then will we really know what this new work model is going to be. But it's definitely going to be hybrid. There'll be different versions of hybrid. Last point is that, you know, sort of when it comes to the office, you know, enterprises are rethinking the office from the perspective of what is now the purpose of the office. Education, higher ed are thinking like, what's the purpose of the campus? Because again, effectively, we've shown that you can be educated from anywhere. You can educate from anywhere. You can learn from anywhere. You can, you know, and you can be productive from anywhere in an enterprise. So the purpose of the office is generally the consensus that's coming down to. That's where people will come together when they need to work together.
Right.
You know, if you're doing, you know, ideation, if you're doing brainstorming, if you want to create a new product, if you want to, sort of create a new organization. So that's where that's the purpose of the office. And then people can go work from anywhere to do their individual work. But the office is going to have to be, it's going to have to be inclusive. Because we've experienced this sort of now over the last 18 months. We can include people from around the planet. May not be the most opportune hour of the day, but it's, it is possible. I've joined calls at 11 o'clock at night. I've joined calls at 6 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning. And you learn how to sort of catch those sleep hours when you can, right? And so it's certainly a hell of a lot better than flying to Europe or flying to Asia. Sort of the notion of getting up for a 5 a.m. call with Asia is not such a terrible thing. Certainly beats that out of flying there. So we're going to see this continue into the future. So it's inclusivity. It's going to have to be collaborative. Because collaborating, whiteboarding, persistent whiteboarding is going to be absolute need. It's going to have to be a safe environment, and it's going to have to be exciting. And all of these together is like, sort of come to the point of what I classify as, the office environment is going to have to give the employee some benefit over being virtual. To be meaningful, to overcome the travel time that's necessary from the commute perspective, the disruption, the fact that they're going to have to get, quote, dressed up, the fact that they're going to have to leave the pet at home, the fact that they might have to get some daycare organized. There's got to be some real benefit, and it's what I classify as the fear of missing out. So it's, I'm very excited, I must admit, about the next 12 months. I, didn't know what was going to happen last year, but it turned out to be a terrific year. The next year, from my perspective, is all about enabling companies to transition into this new hybrid work model, and I'm super excited about that.
That's really great. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and insights there. We'll double click on a few topics. I mean, I used to joke with my friends pre-pandemic that I was, quote unquote, interested in balance. I was probably one of the most out of balance executives in the world. Just the amount of travel and the hours, and it was extreme out of balance. And I was interested in balance, but I found it. And we'll drill a little bit into well-being and how to put sort of structure around physical and mental well-being. I've also found in my own personal life that I'm massively more productive. I mean, if I think about the black cabs, the tubes, the security, checking in for security, like what it would take to get to a meeting, and then you ultimately have the meeting and what it takes to get back. I'm 3 to 5 times more productive now, and we'll drill some more into that as well. But I'd be curious. I mean, I think we are entering into the hybrid world very, very quickly, probably faster than we expected, particularly in the US. And I'm just curious, as you think about the hybrid workplace and the future of work and really kind of reinventing collaboration as we know it. I know, Zoom has lots of future products that are focused in that area. Anything you can share about the role that you want to play in sort of the reinvention of collaboration would be really interesting.
Yeah, well, sort of talked a little bit about it, but, so getting into a little bit more detail, the democratization of meetings. It's like, you're on a meeting with like 8 colleagues around the world, right? Everybody's head is the same size, right? You can't tell seniority, etc. And so how, the question is, how do we maintain that in the, in the post-pandemic world from an, an equality perspective and an inclusion perspective? And so we just started releasing what we call Smart Gallery, which is super cool. And Smart Gallery is if you have, sort of 3 people in a conference room, the typical video experience is you have that little tile up there with the 3 little heads, and you see 3 people in a room. Well, that's kind of like, sort of, I don't know, it's borderline analog video conferencing in our mind. So we're moving to what we call Smart Gallery, using artificial intelligence to look at that video stream and identify that there are 3 people in the room, and then have them come out as sort of 3 individual tiles for the remote participant. And the reason for that is to be able to read those nonverbal cues. I see you nodding. That means you agree. I see you shaking your head. That means you disagree. I see you smiling. That means you like. It's like you have all these nonverbal cues, which are so important now. So how do you see that when it's like three people in a little tile, on the screen? So super excited about Smart Gallery. We introduce things like virtual receptionists. We introduce like office monitoring the number of people on the floor, the metrics around the people, the quality of the air, all sorts of interesting things from that perspective. Or checking in for, hoteling desks and stuff like that. So super cool technology that we released earlier this year. And now we are, starting to beta test our persistent whiteboarding. So how many times in our life have we sort of used a whiteboard and then we put up a sticky note on the whiteboard, do not erase, or we put up we write on it, do not erase, right? So persistent whiteboarding is super exciting because it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a persistent whiteboard. You and I can whiteboard, and then we can share the whiteboard with Christina. She can add her comments to the whiteboard afterwards. Then we can send it off to another group of people. They can whiteboard. You can play the whiteboard back to see how the whiteboard morphed and changed over time. You can bring it into a meeting, put it in a chat channel. So this is going to sort of raise the game from a collaboration perspective yet again. Companies want to do this. Companies are excited about it. People want to do it. It's so super exciting stuff. It's like, Zoom is like, we're known for innovating at speed and scale. We were the first to market in many different cases, and so super excited about this. Yeah.
That's great. Well, let's double click a little bit on the well-being topic. Again, in my personal life, I put some pretty strict guidelines around my schedule early on. One was a kind of pre-workday physical workout, which I've been very strict about doing every morning. And then I do a midday silent walk, which is a 1 hour, walk with no music, no podcast, just purely kind of clear your mind. And it's also become an innovation hour for me, which drives my team crazy because I bring back all kinds of new ideas. And then also end of the day, always having dinner with the family, maybe going back to work after dinner. But so I've been really strict, and I know there's been a lot of concern about burnout, and you've got also, I think, a unconventional view on this. Can you share your thoughts on just how to create the balance?
Yeah, well, it's like it took me a little bit by surprise, actually. Yes, it was, sort of, I remember my wife and I were joking about sort of, are we working from home? Are we living at work? And that made me think, and it's kind of like, early in the pandemic, I would take my laptop or iPad or whatever, and I'd go into the living room or go to the family room or work on the deck or in the kitchen. I don't do that anymore. It's like the only place I work is in my home office. And, kind of like, sort of people talked about sort of like missing the break between sort of work and home or work and personal, professional. And missing that commute. It's like we got a pandemic puppy back in April, and so I take him for a 20-minute walk in the morning. That's my commute to the office. I come back in and I go straight into my office. The dog, generally sits under the desk, and he went out to see the housekeeper now. So and then just before this call, it's like I took him for a walk again. I know you called me to sort of like see what I was doing. To get my cup of coffee, but it's I think that and the thinking, Eric led a conversation last night with all managers at Zoom across the entire organization, several hundred of us, and one of the things he sort of reiterated is you need to take time in your day, in your work day,
right,
to think.
Exactly.
Stuff down. I know lots of people say it's kind of like, you get video fatigue. It's like, I'd rather see you than have, sort of be like this, because, sort of, I'd rather see the verbal. I'd rather see your face. I'd rather see you smile. I find it much more engaging than doing this. It's like, it's the notion of, we used to say, can you imagine going into a conference room and putting a brown paper bag over your head because people wouldn't turn the cameras on? This is so much better to see people. And so people say turn the cameras off and make non-video calls if if it's yeah. It's like, yeah, I do make non-video calls. It's like I made a restaurant reservation earlier today. It's like I called the restaurant and I spoke to a person and I made a reservation, So, but the notion of, so people are also suggesting, well, when you go out for a walk, do a phone call when you go for a walk. It's like, why? It's kind of like, I need a break. It's like, I need my brain cells to get, because when you're working in this environment, I fundamentally believe your brain is going at a processing speed much faster, much more focused than before. And so if I'm working for an hour and a half on a topic or a set of topics, it's like after that, it's like, I need a break, man. It's like, I'm human. And it's like my brain needs like a couple of minutes to sort of reset, if you will. And so generally I, take several breaks during the day, take the dog for a walk, do some thinking. The only problem with that, my friend, is trying to remember all the ideas that have sort of accumulated up here. I've been thinking about taking a pen and notebook with me.
Yeah, I mean, I take my phone and I'll just send myself an email with the idea, and then when I get back, I can.
But I'm worried. It's like, so what happens though when you do that? You take your phone and somebody Christina calls you. You're gonna take the call or not take the call?
No. You just have to be disciplined. So another topic, and I've got a bit of an unconventional view here. I mean, if I think about my life pre-pandemic, if I was going to a meeting, I'd spend the 2 hours to get there, have the meeting. It actually wasn't very personal. The executive would walk into the room and we'd jump sort of straight to business, and it was not personal. And then I would spend the 2 hours going back in the other direction. Now I can have 5 Zoom calls. And what I found is they're very meaningful discussions. And usually the first 10 minutes, you're having a personal discussion. Even if you don't know the person, you have to ask maybe one question: where are you working these days? And they'll start telling you about their lake house up in Canada or whatever it might be, where they're working from. And then they'll tell you about their kids, and they'll tell you about the pet they just got, and they'll mention, oh, I have this new hobby that I'm investing in. So I've learned more about people personally than ever before in this new Zoom world. And then we get straight to business. In the next 15 minutes, we get to business, and then we've got clear next steps. So I actually think you can develop better personal relationships in the Zoom world. And I know that's an alternative mindset. Everybody wants to go back to the office because they want to develop the personal relationships. But I'd be curious your view on this topic. I mean, what have you found?
Yeah, I think that, I think we have to do a bit of both. I don't think that, sort of the virtual world is sustainable in its own right. I think you do have to, have some combination of in-person human experience. I think, putting the professional side, aside for a moment, is like, we're humans. We love congregating with other humans. That's the way we are, right? It's, that's the animal instinct in us. But I think that, people have missed their colleagues. I think people have missed their friends and their family even more so.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to take a vacation, being able to go to a movie, being able to go to a sports game, being able to go out with friends for dinner, travel. I think that's where I don't have any science and I don't have any facts behind it, but I think that's where people are struggling more. And when you look at the travel industry, they are seeing and expecting a huge uptick on travel from a personal perspective, a social perspective, than the pre-pandemic numbers. And they expect to see sort of, a sustained decline on business travel, although it will come back at some point. But to your point about the personal connections, I remember reading an article, Emmett, early in the pandemic. I think it was, sort of April timeframe, and the headline read, "Social distancing, you must be joking." I never thought I would know so much about the people I work with. I've been in their homes, I've been in their living rooms, dining rooms, kitchens, bedrooms, even some bathrooms. I've met their parents, I've met their kids, I've met their, grandparents, I've met their pets, I've seen dogs, cats, I've even seen some snakes.
That's right.
And all this personal relationship stuff, like this, to your point, actually creates really strong connections between people.
Right.
I always remember back in my days at KPMG, as an example, we deployed a social networking tool across the IT organization. And I remember I got an email one day from our CEO saying, I don't understand, the biggest topic we talk about at KPMG is digital transformation. This is circa 4 or 5 years ago now.
Mhm.
And I don't understand why the dog group is the most popular. And the second most popular is the travel group.
Right.
And I remember explaining that, well, it's terrific. It's like, sort of people share a video of their dog, got a new puppy, etc. And what's great about that is that when you go into the conference room and I'm sitting across from, Brian, and Brian just shared his new puppy photos, and it's like, hey, Brian, your puppy is so cute. It's like, it breaks all the ice. It
That's
creates
right.
an instant relationship. Or, Suzanne shares a video of the herd running from a helicopter when she was like doing safari in South Africa. I mean, this is really, it's like, it's just sort of, it just creates those sort of connections that
That's right.
you can't create in the antiseptic world of the business environment.
I agree. I agree.
Another
So-
example is I was on a board call and the CEO is making his executive presentation. This is not a Zoom board. This is a different board. And his wife walks into the office and says, I need you to hold the baby. And he goes, I'm making an executive presentation. And she says, that's an answer to a different question. And suddenly the baby's like here, and like, he's holding the baby, and not one member of the board said anything. And the conversation, he just continued his presentation. And
That's great.
and what's wrong with that? Because at the end of the day, we're humans.
That's right. That's right. So another topic, as you know, because you were a guest and a keynote speaker at several. We used to do many in-person events pre-pandemic. We typically would do 8 or so a year. We would host 20 or 30 executives at each one of these events. We sort of pivoted fully into the virtual roundtable world, and last year we did 50 events with different mixture of executives, but we hosted 500 executives last year in our program. And I have to say, I learned more last year in a single year than I might have learned in a previous 3-year period, just because having so many collaborative discussions, and the 90-minute format is perfect. People are able to arrive and be present and have a discussion. So I'd be curious your thoughts about kind of the future of Zoom from a thought leadership standpoint and a learning standpoint. And then also, as we can go back to, Iceland or wherever it might be, how do you see those in-person experiences changing in the future?
Yeah, so absolutely. So, sort of pre-pandemic events all over the world were always in person, right? It was kind of like there was occasionally a video, occasionally someone would join virtually. And then 100% went virtual, right? The virtual event market like exploded last year. And so talking to many event organizers around the world, they fundamentally believe that they're going to have a hybrid model in the future too. Some are saying we'll never do hybrid. We're only going to ever do in person. I think that nut's going to crack over time because look, the world has got, depending on your view, I don't know what the right expression is, the world got smaller or the world got bigger, because you can, here we are. It's kind of like, you can host an event and you can have participants from around the world. You can host an event and have speakers from around the world. So I don't know if that makes it smaller or bigger, but your audience is bigger and the ability to connect with people is dramatically smaller. We just released this month our Zoom events platform, which is really rather cool, and we're going to host our annual user conference on our events platform. Obviously, inside partners will get an invitation, and we'll share that with you, and you can share it with your portfolio companies. We'd love everybody to join us. Last year, we had 50,000 people join.
Amazing.
Join our event, and we're looking to increase that number this year, so it's super exciting. And our Zoom events platform is super cool, where you can brand it your way. You can have videos, you can look at the agenda, you can network, And, sort of, and last point on the Zoom events is going back to how I started this conversation about how do we make the virtual experience as good, if not better than in person. So I'll give you an example. Imagine an event, a big event now, multi-track, sort of big event. And you have like the big keynote presentation. And let's say, in the in-person world, what happens is, somebody walks out to get a cup of coffee, somebody else walks out to get a cup of coffee, they see each other, they start a dialogue outside the room, they got no idea what's going on inside. So in the virtual world, similar, big event going on, I see you in the event, I can ping you and say, hey, Emmett, nice to see you. And the next thing is we can spin up a one-on-one dialogue. We can see each other. We can talk to each other. We can chat with each other. But whilst we're doing that, we also see the main stage. We can also hear the main stage. We can also see the presenter on the main stage at a lower volume. So you and I can talk and we're kind of like listening to this in the back. Hey, Emmett, it's kind of like, what Eric's talking about right now, I really want to listen to. So let's connect afterwards. And then boom, we both go back to that is better than the in-person event where we would have missed.
Absolutely.
So super exciting about the Zoom events platform. If anybody wants to know more or anything to do with Zoom, obviously I'm available.
That's really great. As you know, as a firm, we've got a very large portfolio of, fast-growing software businesses, and I'm sure somebody within the firm has done the math. But if you add up, our portfolio, we're a very, very large customer of Zoom, and I know they're probably not fully leveraging the platform. I mean, can you provide any thoughts and guidance on what could our portfolio companies be doing to make sure they're maximizing the opportunity that they currently have?
Those, sort of, well, they should be, certainly in touch with their account executive and their customer success manager and things of that nature. But, sort of just thinking a little bit out of the box, if there are a set of portfolio companies that would like to do like a group executive briefing on all things Zoom from a meetings perspective, a webinar perspective, events, our Zoom phone platform. I mean, we introduced Zoom Phone, which is PBX in the cloud, January of 2019, so a little over 2+ years, almost 2.5 years ago, I guess. And as of December 2020, we had deployed 1 million seats, which was a record, 7 quarters, and the next best was 19 quarters to achieve 1 million seats. And then we eclipsed 1.5 million seats deployed as of April 30th. So it's it's huge. We're when we launched in 2.5 years ago, we were native in 2 countries. Now we're native in 46 countries with another half dozen or so that we're piloting and testing. So again, and then there's there's our customized SDK where you can take the Zoom components, build them into your proprietary app. So lots of things to talk about. So if there's a group of portfolio companies that would like an executive briefing, we'd be delighted to set that up. We'll get all the subject matter experts to come in, and we'll do it completely on Zoom.
That's fantastic.
We'll do a Zoom event. We'll use the Zoom.
Absolutely.
How's that? And people can dial in and select which event they want, which component of the. Yeah, I think that would be a great idea.
That's a great offer.
I'd love that.
I want to just follow up on your earlier comment, and then we'll go to some closing comments. But one thing I found fascinating after all these discussions that I've had about the future of work, never once has sustainability come up during those discussions. And I think what's really impressive is the way you're measuring, your carbon footprint and just the impact that you're having, from a sustainability standpoint. Could you comment a bit on that? Because I think it's really impressive.
Yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, sort of, yes, we're affecting the carbon footprint by doing a Zoom meeting like this, for sure. But it's, many orders of magnitude, some tiny fraction of what it would be to get together in person, just you and me. So I can't remember the metric, but I remember the 2 digits were 45, but I don't know if it was 45 tons or 45,000 tons of carbon impact that we had, and that was as of September of last year. So we have talked about how do we measure the impact of using Zoom meetings. At one point I joked about the fact that we should have like Zoom miles, so that, sort of to replace air miles. So if
Right. That's great. I like that.
you accumulate miles on Zoom and you get
I'd be a platinum member.
exactly. Yeah. I would have the time. Maybe next time I take the dog for a walk, I'll think more about sort of the Zoom Miles program. But that's only a joke. There's no program called the Zoom Miles program. Don't even that's just my out of box thinking, if you will. But yeah, I think that sort of over the last 18 months, the world has changed a lot. And just sort of final comments. The world has changed a lot. People have pivoted a lot. People have figured out what's really important to them, to their companies, to their employees, and changing their behaviors, quite honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the pre-pandemic world, much like you, I would be on 3 or 4 flights a week. Wouldn't think twice about it. It's like I would fly home to sort of unpack and repack and get on a plane the next day. I mean, crazy stuff. I used to ship my luggage because I'd be in like 3 cities over 2 days, and I couldn't be. I had no time to schlep the luggage around. So I'm not going to do that in the post-pandemic world. We've adopted at Zoom what we call a Zoom first culture. We Zoom first, and only if absolutely necessary and there's no alternative will we get on a plane. So we as a company are going to be, focused on, our carbon impact from a company perspective, and the financial implications of this and the productivity implications are huge as well. And so, but I think that we aren't alone. I think many other companies are also thinking about their impact that they're having on I joked with my wife, I feel like the air is better.
I believe it.
It's like I just feel like everything's greener. It's like just feel like the whole world, I mean, we had a bear roaming around here, late last year, which is kind of like really weird. But animals feel safer that they can sort of roam streets and things of that nature. So, and we've seen a variety of things like that in the news. I think it was yesterday there was a series of ducks and ducklings walking around Brooklyn and went to visit a bagel shop. I don't know if you guys in the UK.
That's great.
And then made their way back to Prospect Park into the lake. So, so I think that my hope is that that this change in people's behaviors and their personal lives, sort of lives on into the post-pandemic world. That the world becomes there's too much hostility in the world.
Yeah.
Way too much violence. I don't know if it's always existed and we're just hearing about it now, but my hope is that we have a safer and nicer world. I feel that people are genuinely more friendlier than they were pre-pandemic. So
that's really nice. Well, Harry, as always, it's so great to catch up. And this is, for me, as good as our time in Iceland together. So thank you so much for that. I mean, from my point of view, the next 10 years are going to be the most extraordinary period I think that we'll ever see. The pace of digital change, the unlocking that we've seen is just unprecedented, and I think it's going to have to sustain into the future. We're also seeing young companies are moving faster than ever, raising money faster than ever, being able to develop products into market faster than ever. So I think the next 10 or 20 years is going to be fascinating, and if we can have more balance in the process and have more sensitivity to making the world a better place, it's going to be really exciting. So thanks for sharing your thoughts. And Christina, do you want to make a final comment about the recording?
Yes. Well, thank you both, Harry and Emmett, for an amazing discussion today. And thank you all for joining us. So we will be sending an email later today with a link to a recording as well as some other resources to check out. So keep a lookout for that. But to everyone else, have a wonderful day. We hope to see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Christina. Thank